Hello, everyone. Welcome to Unity of New Westminster's celebration service. Please join in the singing of our opening song today.
We come together to behold the power of love, the power of light. We come together to behold. We are divine. Lift up our hands, lift up our hearts, oh, lift up our vision, lift it to the stars. Dance in the glory, whirl in the grace. See God in every face. See God in every face. We come together to behold the power of love, the power of light. We come together to behold. We are divine. Lift up our hands, lift up our hearts, oh, lift up our vision, lift it to the stars. Dance in the glory, whirl in the grace. See God in every face. See God in every face. We come together to behold the power of love, power of light. We come together to behold. We are divine. Lift up our hands, lift up our hearts, oh, lift up our vision, lift it to the stars. Dance in the glory, whirl in the grace. See God in every face. 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 Hey!
Welcome back. I am Reverend Rona Segara, and it is my pleasure to welcome you on behalf of the community at Unity of New Westminster in beautiful British Columbia, Canada. We would love to stay connected with you, so please subscribe to our newsletter or like us on Facebook or subscribe to our YouTube channel, and that way you can always know what's going on in our community. The Unity movement offers ideas for full and abundant living. We draw on the teachings of Jesus, who we consider our primary way shower and example. And we honor that there is universal wisdom to be found in faith traditions, in song, in story, in poetry, all over the planet. We respect and honor every person's right to choose their own life path. All are welcome here. All are worthy here. All are celebrated here. We open our service today in prayer. I gratefully acknowledge that I speak to you on the traditional and unceded territory of the Semiahmoo First Nation. And we give thanks to First Nation peoples everywhere for their custody of this beautiful land. We give thanks for our connection one with each other. That connection that happens whether we are in each other's physical presence or not. That connection that binds us all together. We acknowledge that there is only one presence, that there is only one power, that power that is understood by many names, many faces, and many paths. And we affirm that regardless of the name, the face, or the path of our understanding, that we are one human family. And it is in that knowledge of our oneness that we send a blessing for love, for peace, for contentment to every being on this planet, to every being, regardless of all the labels that threaten to divide us. We are one. And for this knowledge, for this intention, and for the power that we have to bless, we give thanks. Amen.
When you're down and troubled and you need a helping hand, and nothing is going right. Close your eyes and think of me, and soon I will be there to brighten up even your darkest night. You just call up my name, and you know wherever I am, I'll come running. Oh yeah, babe, to see you again. Winter, spring, summer, or fall, now all you got to do is call, and I'll be there, yeah, yeah, yeah. You've got a friend. If the sky above you should turn dark and full of clouds, and that old north wind should begin to blow, keep your head together and call my name out loud now. Soon I'll be knocking upon your door. You just call up my name, and you know wherever I am, I'll come running. Oh yes, I will see you again. Winter, spring, summer, or fall, yeah. All you got to do is call, and I'll be there, yeah, yeah, yeah. Hey, ain't it good to know that you got a friend when people can be so cold? They'll hurt you and desert you. Well, they'll take your soul if you let them. Oh, yeah, but don't you let them. You just call out my name, and you know wherever I am, I'll come running to see you again. Oh, babe, don't you know about winter, spring, summer, or fall? Hey, now all you've got to do is call, Lord, I'll be there, yes I will. No, you've got a friend. You've got a friend, yeah. Ain't it good to know you've got a friend? Ain't it good to know you've got a friend? Oh yeah, yeah, you've got a friend.
My grandmother had a quote in the art on her bedroom wall, and it is a quote that I have never forgotten. It reads like this: I shall pass this way but once. Any good, therefore, that I may do, let me do it now, for I shall not pass this way again. I shall pass this way but once. Any good, therefore, that I may do, let me do it now, for I shall not pass this way again. Years later, and thanks to the internet, I searched those words and found that it was written by a Quaker minister. And the words have always reminded me of the parable of the Good Samaritan. The parable of the Good Samaritan is found in Luke chapter 10, beginning at the 25th verse. And it is essentially in two parts. It reads like this. Just then, a lawyer stood up to test Jesus. Teacher, he said, what must I do to inherit eternal life? Jesus said to him, what is written in the law? What do you read there? The lawyer answered, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus said to him, you have given the right answer. Do this, and you will live. That's part one. The story continues. But wanting to justify himself, he asked Jesus, and who is my neighbor? And Jesus replied, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell into the hands of robbers who stripped him, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. Now by chance, a priest was going down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. So likewise, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, while traveling, came near him, and when he saw him, he was moved with pity. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, having poured oil and wine on them. Then he put him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii, gave them to an innkeeper, and said, take care of him, and when I come back, I will repay you whatever more you spend. Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? The lawyer says, the one who showed him mercy. Jesus said to him, go and do likewise. Let's look at some of the context of this story. We see a lawyer wanting to test Jesus and ask him in that test, he asks him how he is going to be able to have eternal life. And Jesus responds with a question of his own. What does the law say? And the lawyer responds with a part of the Shema, the daily prayer said by Jewish people to this day. The words are found in the book of Deuteronomy, in the Hebrew scriptures. And the words are, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. And Luke adds mind in there. And then the lawyer adds another excerpt of the law from the book of Leviticus. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus essentially says, right, do these things, love God, love your neighbor, and you will live. Then we see that the lawyer is not completely satisfied with what Jesus has to say. And so he says, okay, but who's my neighbor? And that's when Jesus tells the story, which we have now come to know as the Good Samaritan. And at first glance, we see that the story is a fairly straightforward reminder to be kind to strangers, regardless of who they are. And that is the part that reminds me of my grandmother's message on her wall, that any good that we are able to do, let us do it. And as with most stories, and certainly with Jesus's parables, there are levels at which we can consider this story. Yes, it is a simple reminder that we should be kind to everyone, including the people we don't know. And we can look at the characters in the story and see how they are parts of who we are. And we can identify where we are the characters at different points in our lives. Sometimes we are all of the characters on the very same day. We can look at aspects of the story as well as the characters and see ourselves in and our lives in those aspects. And then when we do that, we can see even deeper the message of this story, which is when we act with compassion, we can add to the fullness of life. So let's look at some of the aspects and then some of the characters in the story, in this parable. The first question we can pose for ourselves is, are we on the road to Jericho or to Jerusalem? This aspect of the story is the journey itself, the journey between Jericho and Jerusalem. We're told in the story that the traveler, the priest, and the Levite are going down from Jerusalem to Jericho. Well, physically, Jerusalem is 2,500 feet above sea level. Jericho rests at 825 feet below sea level in the Dead Sea Valley. From the Mediterranean Sea and moving eastward, we find Jerusalem first, higher than Jericho, and it catches the moisture and the sea breeze. And then further to the east, we find Jericho. It is thought to be the oldest continually inhabited city in the world. And although it has an ancient natural spring that irrigates the immediate area and creates an oasis, which has led to it being considered a resort town of sorts for long, long time, hundreds of years, thousands of years. The road between Jerusalem and Jericho is desert-like. What happens is all of that moisture reaches Jerusalem, and then it is caught there and caught by the elevation of Jerusalem, and then past Jerusalem and towards Jericho. One travels downward to below sea level on a path that is rocky and barren and would have been narrow in places. The distance between Jerusalem and Jericho is 17 miles. And it would have been a place with no amenities, no access to water, no access to shelter. People would go from Jerusalem down to Jericho to relax, to have fun, to party. Jerusalem, metaphysically, represents spiritual centeredness, a place of higher consciousness, the place where we operate from an energy of fullness and wholeness. Jericho, on the other hand, represents a place of material consciousness. It represents the place where we have lower energy, where we allow ourselves to be influenced by outside forces such as fear and pleasure, convenience and inconvenience. And the road between Jerusalem and Jericho moves downward. We move from a higher consciousness to a lower consciousness. And for me, the fact that Jericho is the oldest inhabited city in history is interesting in and of itself when we look at it metaphysically, because it represents the fact that for as long as humans have been humans, we have longed for and sought out material pleasures represented by Jericho. We have also always been on a road, choosing the direction that our life journey will take between a spirit-led life represented by Jerusalem or a life focused on material things represented by Jericho. And while we see that the priest, the Levite, and our victim are on their way down to Jericho, we don't know which direction the Samaritan was traveling. I like to imagine that he was traveling up in consciousness towards Jerusalem. Like our characters on the road, we are also on the road of life's journey. Sometimes it's rocky. Sometimes it feels barren. And with every step, we have the opportunity to choose the direction of our journey. With every action, with every thought, we move towards either Jericho or Jerusalem, towards fear and the temporary relief of material experiences, or towards love and enduring contentment. When you are on the road and you are choosing which step to take, ask yourself, what is the next most loving step that I can take? What is the next most loving action that I can take? What is the next most loving thought that I can choose? Do I choose to step towards Jerusalem, or am I choosing to move towards Jericho? Next, let's look at the characters in the story and for ways that we play similar roles as the characters at various points in our lives. One of the questions that we want to understand is, Why did Jesus choose a Samaritan? We see a priest, a Levite, and a Samaritan. This is an exceptionally unusual group of three. Priests were the spiritual leaders at the temple. Levites were their assistant. Today's equivalent might be someone who is a lay leader in a religious ceremony, someone who participates in the service and assists the priest, such as a reader or a musician or a person making announcements. The natural third in this triad would be a congregant, a person who is Jewish or a member of the community. We would expect priest, Levite, person who is Jewish, priest, Levite, congregant, priest, Levite, member of community. We would never expect, under any circumstance, to hear priest, Levite, Samaritan. Why is this such a shocking comparison? Because Samaritans and Jews hated each other and had hated each other for hundreds and hundreds of years. The Jews thought of the people from Samaria as half-breeds. To them, there was no such thing as a good Samaritan. To the Samaritans, there was no such thing as a good Jew. If the priest and the Levite were to be considered the in-group in Jesus's Jewish audience, then the person from Samaria would be the outcast. Samaritans were reviled. Think of today's language might be, think of how unwelcome a person of color would be in a group of racists. A Democrat might be in a group of Republicans. A conservative might be in a group of liberals. A woman in a group of misogynists. Think of how unwelcome a person who is gay would be in a group of anti-LGBTQ activists. How unwelcome a street person would be in an exclusive country club. This was the dissonance that Jesus was introducing when he said, priest, Levite, Samaritan. In his decision to make the Samaritan the hero of the story, and by inference, to make the priest and the Levite the bad guys, Jesus makes it clear that what matters isn't the rituals that we perform or the roles that we play. What matters is how we love each other and how we love ourselves, especially when we see people in pain or we ourselves are in pain. I mentioned that we are all characters at different points in our lives, that we play every role at different points in our lives. So what do we see the priest and the Levite do when they come across the person who has been beaten and robbed? How do we play those roles in our lives? In a nutshell, as the priest and the Levite, we move away from pain. The priest and the Levite cross the road. They go out of their way to get out of the way. It could be because they're concerned that they will become unclean if they touch someone who is unclean. Or maybe they're in a hurry to get to their fun time at the oasis in Jericho. Maybe they're afraid that if they stop, they may be robbed too, or that somehow they will be contaminated in some way by this person who is lying there. Whatever their reasons, They want to avoid the person in pain. How do we see that play in our lives? Well, people who are sick will tell you that their friends will sometimes cut off from them if they reveal a serious or terminal diagnosis. It's to be expected. In fact, in support groups that work with people who are suffering from cancer and from other terminal diagnoses, it's expected and spoken about as it's as if the friends are too uncomfortable with the other's pain. And it's easier to ignore them and turn away from them than to be in that place, which is so desperately uncomfortable, and be with our friends when they are suffering. When people grieve, we are sometimes uncomfortable when they cry. We may say that we want to help, but only to a point, and only if that point is where we don't have to be too uncomfortable. There's a story told about Mother Teresa who had come to the United States on a speaking tour, and a person came up to her tremendously touched by her story and asking how she could also make a difference. And Mother Teresa said, go outside, feed a person who is homeless and on the street. That's uncomfortable. It's easier when it's organized in some way, harder when it is just us having to or being invited to directly address the pain of others. We act as the priest and the Levite when we avoid the pain of others, when we cross the road so we don't need to be near them. We also act as the priest and the Levite when we avoid our own pain. There may be parts of us which hurt, and rather than allow that pain its place, our tendency is to repress and suppress and depress our pain. We find things to distract us, things that we find in the material world of Jericho. And in doing so, we bypass and leave ourselves in the desert, suffering and in pain. Like the priest and the Levite, who likely consider themselves holy, we may use our spirituality or religiousness to deny that we are suffering. I'm spiritual, so I only think of positive things. Have you heard that? This is a form of spiritual bypass. We cross the road when we determine that we are not going to look at our hurt. And yet, when we don't look at our hurt, we deny our humanness. When we don't look at the hurt of others, we deny their humanness. And that leads us to be in a place in the desert where we suffer more. Pain is uncomfortable. It is messy. It is scary. When we are the priest or the Levite, we focus on our fear of discomfort. And in this way, we bypass and move away from the pain, leaving it still there and unresolved. Instead, we are invited to consider being the Samaritan. And as the Samaritan, we meet the pain. The Samaritan represents love in the story. And rather than cross the road to avoid the person in pain, the Samaritan makes a point of going to the person in pain. The message that I take from this subtle language difference is that when we see people in pain, love looks like meeting them where they are. When we are in pain, love looks like meeting ourselves where we are, even if it feels uncomfortable, even if it's ugly, even if it's messy. And that can take some courage. It means being willing to leave the comfortable path that we are on. It means accepting even the parts that make us feel exposed and vulnerable. When we face the naked hurt in ourselves or in someone else, when we face the loss in ourselves or in someone else, when we look at that sense of being beaten and broken, and we are willing to go to that pain and see it and accept it instead of avoiding it, then we are able to add soothing oil and refreshing wine and surround the hurt with the cloak of our love. When we are the Samaritan, we move closer and meet the woundedness. Note also that the Samaritan didn't stop to question whether the wounded man was worthy of his attention. The Samaritan saw a person who was incapacitated. Without someone's intervention, the man would surely die. And yet, where the priest and the Levite are focused on their own feelings of discomfort and fear and move away from that woundedness because it makes them feel uncomfortable and who knows what other reasons, the Samaritan focuses on the wounded person's discomfort and fear, moves towards the woundedness regardless of his level of discomfort and regardless of whether or not the person did something wrong, deserves it. It's his own fault. None of that computes for the person who is the Samaritan. They see the need. They see the suffering. Any good, therefore, that they do it now. Let's look for a moment at the thieves. The thieves in the story, we don't see who they are. We just see the results of their action. They represent the forces that are sometimes unseen, certainly outside of ourselves and within ourselves, the forces which strip us and rob us of our sense of security and wholeness. Thieves can be life circumstances beyond our control. They can be environmental disasters. They can be illnesses. They can be things that interact with other people, divorces, job losses, illnesses, betrayals, acts of violence, so much more. These circumstances, like the thieves, don't ask whether the person has done something wrong or bad to deserve this. Rather, these are life circumstances. They just happen upon people as they travel through their life. The thieves can also be us and how we can steal from others. When we speak in a mean tone, when we say demeaning things or critical things to ourselves or to others, when we do mean things, we are stealing. My sister Jill observed years ago that every misdeed that humans do to humans could be considered a form of theft. We can steal life, we can steal freedom, we can steal money, we can steal stuff, we can steal peace. We can attempt to steal dignity. When we dehumanize and make people less, when the force of what we want overrides their voice and overrides their right to have a say and to be heard, then we are the equivalent of the thieves in the story, and we can have the impact of robbing a person of their sense of wholeness, leaving them feeling torn and broken. The thieves within us can steal from ourselves. They can be the thoughts within us that say, you're unworthy, you don't matter, you don't belong. These thoughts that rob us of ourself and our sense of worth. Each one of us was born because we matter. And each one of us matters because we were born. If you remember nothing else from today's talk, remember this. Each one of us was born because we matter. Each one of us matters because we were born. And yet at some point, that sense of worthiness, of mattering, of belonging, can be stolen from us. Sometimes to lesser degrees, sometimes to greater degrees. Whenever we rob a person of their sense of self, we are that thief, including when we rob ourselves. Whenever we make others or ourselves less than, whenever we say or think that they or we are inferior, that they or we are not smart enough or are too smart, or not thin enough or are too thin, or not sporty enough or are too sporty, when we name as inferior their race or our own race, their gender or our gender, their religion, their politics, our religion, our politics, who we love, all those labels, we are in effect stripping away our humanity, our dignity, our sense of wholeness. Whenever we say things that are mean or critical about ourselves or others, we are the thief. And so when we have the opportunity to steal, let's stay hidden and let's choose not to take advantage of a vulnerable moment and be the thief. And finally, we can be the person who is hurt. The person who is hurt in the story is a traveler on their way from Jerusalem down to Jericho. It could be anyone. We don't know their name. We don't know how good or bad they are. And to a greater or lesser degree, again, we have all been that hurt person at times. The sad part is that sometimes we don't recover from the attack. Sometimes there's a part of us that doesn't recover from the attack. And the point I want to make here is that if we are the person who is harmed, it does not mean that we deserve it because of karma, or because we didn't align our thoughts properly, or because we didn't pray enough, or because we weren't good enough. Circumstances happen to us. Life, in all its beauty and its occasional sorrows, happens to us. Just as the hurt person was simply traveling on their life journey, so we can occasionally be the hurt person as we travel on our life journey. It serves no purpose to then add insult to injury and play the role of robber for ourselves by berating ourselves, by asking, why did this happen to me? I should have gone a different route. I should have chosen differently, and so on. When we are the hurt person, let us surrender and accept and be open to help from unexpected sources, such as is represented by the Samaritan. Accept the lifeline from wherever it comes, so that we can be restored to the fullness of life. When we have robbed ourselves or others have stolen our sense of worth from us, we get to choose whether we will bypass the hurt, like the priest and the Levite, or whether we will be the Good Samaritan in our own lives and tend to our own woundedness. When we ignore and turn away from parts of ourselves that make us feel uncomfortable, then we cannot live fully. So these are some of the messages that I take from the story of the Good Samaritan. First, the journey. Which direction are we traveling? Every action is a step towards either Jericho, fear-based and selfish thinking, or Jerusalem, love-based, selfless thinking. We consider the choice that Jesus made of including a Samaritan in the same sentence as priest and Levite. Are we willing to expand our acceptance of who is okay, of who our neighbor is? Can we look with fresh eyes and see different possibilities for those who we view as less than, so that as we sing often on a Sunday, we can see God in every face? And then we have the choice to act like the Samaritan. And rather than move away, are we willing to move toward the woundedness of others and toward the woundedness of our own pain, rather than be focused on our own discomfort as the priest and the Levite were? Let's follow the example of the Samaritan and focus on the discomfort of the other. Let us promise ourselves that we will not be a thief who robs a sense of security and self-worth from any person, including ourselves. And if we can't uplift, let us remain hidden and silent rather than steal. And let us remember that sometimes we are the victim. That does not mean that we've done something wrong or something bad to deserve whatever circumstance we are facing. We can be uplifted to new life again, even when we feel wounded. So be like the Good Samaritan. And remember the words of my grandmother's wall. I shall pass this way but once. Any good, therefore, that I may do. Any good, therefore, that I may do. Let me do it now, for I shall not pass this way again. Do good. Do good. I bless you.
I cannot do all the good that the world needs, but the world needs all the good that I can do. I cannot do all the good that the world needs, but the world needs all the good that I can do.
I cannot do
No puedo hacer
all the good
todo lo bueno
that the world
que el mundo
needs,
necesita.
but the world
Todo el mundo
needs
necesita
all the good
todo lo bueno
that I can do.
que puedo hacer.
I cannot
Je
do
ne peux pas faire
all the good
tout le bien
that the world
dont le monde
needs,
a besoin.
but the world
Dont le monde a besoin
needs all the good
de tout le bien
that I can do.
que je peux lui faire.
I cannot do all the good that the world needs, but the world needs all the good I can do. I cannot do all the good that the world needs, but the world needs all the good I can do.
Womai nang mun suk sai gai dan ngor nang jumai bang hin.
I cannot do
Lagdar amalu
all the good
kul jaya
that the world
al alam
needs,
mutaj
but the world
lakin al alam
needs all the good
mutaj kul jaya amalu.
I cannot do
Ani lo osa
all the good
et kol hatov
that the world
שהעולם
needs,
צריך,
but the world
אבל העולם
needs all the good
צריך הטוב
that I can do.
שאני עושה.
I cannot do all the good that the world needs, but the world needs all the good I can do. I cannot do all the good that the world needs, but the world needs all the good I can do.
Itori kayo suku unante dekina I soredimo kito kayo suku itori minreru.
I cannot do all the good that the world needs, but the world needs all the good I can do. I cannot do all the good that the world needs, but the world needs all the good I can do. I cannot do all the good that the world
Please join us on Zoom on Mondays at 10:30 for a time of prayer and meditation. All are welcome to join us as we share a time of connection and renewal, and as we hold people in prayer. At this service, we check in and share with each other. We have a time of guided prayer, and we read the names of the people on our prayer list. It is an uplifting and restful experience. All are welcome. Every Monday from 10:30 a.m. till 11:15 a.m. on Zoom. Please join us. Lyle has finished the star blanket, and it is hanging in the fellowship hall. It is a queen-size quilt made from 13 pairs of denim jeans, and there are 350 carefully chosen pieces that make up the design. We will raffle the blanket off with tickets, which are $10 each, or 3 for $25. And we expect to have the raffle tickets available sometime in the next couple of weeks. Thank you, Lyle, for this amazing gift. It is beautiful, beautiful, beautiful work, and you are a beautiful person. So grateful for you. Cindy's Creative Cafe and Karaoke is back for the first time since the pandemic. It is a chance for you to paint, draw, sing, tell a story, or express yourself artistically in some other way. Admission is by donation, and if you want to paint, the cost is $20, which pays for the materials. Here is your chance to connect with friends, to share your talents, and to learn something new. Please share this information with your family and friends. All are welcome on the last Sunday of each month from 12:30 to 3:30 p.m. Yay, coffee time is back. After almost 2 years without our famous hospitality hour, we are excited to announce that coffee time is back. The time after the Sunday service is so meaningful for our community. It is when we enjoy a hot or cold drink and snacks, and we connect and visit with each other. If it feels comfortable for you, please join us in the fellowship hall after service. Today is the last Sunday of the month, and it is the day that we celebrate the birthdays in the month. If it was your birthday this month, please join us on Zoom after the service so that we can celebrate you. Happy birthday. We are grateful for the financial support which we receive from those who enjoy our programs. With the pandemic, some of our expenses have been lessened and some of our expenses don't go away. So thank you for your generosity, which supports our ministry. We give a portion of our income to organizations that do amazing work in our community, both locally and in our province. So your gifts make a difference in lives. We welcome donations by credit card, check, cash, or our preferred method, Interac e-transfer, to unityofnewwestminster@gmail.com. Interac is free of service charges. Thank you. Now, please bring to your hands, to your hearts, or to your minds something that you are grateful for, as we give thanks and remember how much we have to be grateful for. We are so blessed.
I am so blessed. I am so I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so blessed.
And we come to the end of another service. I thank you for joining us. I hope that you enjoyed your experience with us today. I wish you all a very, very blessed week. Goodbye, everybody.
Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be, with God as creator, family are we. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my joyous vow, to take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me.
I am the light of God. I am the love of God. I am the power of God. I am the presence of God. Wherever I am, God is. I am the light of God. I am the love of God. I am the power of God. I am the presence of God. Wherever I am, God is. You are the light of God. You are the love of God. You are the power of God. You are the presence of God. Wherever you are, God is. You are the light of God. You are the love of God. You are the power of God. You are the presence of God. Wherever you are, God is. We are the light of God. We are the love of God. We are the power of God. We are the presence of God.